Commander Jaren Kale stepped off the shuttle onto the smooth silver surface of Zarvok Prime. The ground beneath his boots shimmered faintly, like the reflection of distant stars caught in flowing water. He paused, blinking against the bright light that bounced off the palace towers. Years had passed since he had left this world. Years filled with battles, missions, and victories that had earned him a place in human history. But none of that mattered in this moment. Not here. Not now. He felt his heart tighten as he caught sight of the palace gates. The towering arches were carved with symbols of the Xyrian dominion, intricate patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. The gates were open, welcoming, or perhaps warning him. Jaren's hand brushed against the strap of his side pack. He had trained for countless missions, faced alien warlords, navigated asteroid storms, and led boarding raids on hostile ships. But walking through these gates was different. This was a place of personal reckoning. He had left for a mission years ago, a mission that had saved hundreds of human colonies and expanded humanity's reach into the galaxy. And in doing so, he had left behind Princess Lyra, the woman he was supposed to marry. He had abandoned the wedding, turned his back on the ceremony that had been planned for months, and vanished into the stars. Now, he was back. The gardens of the palace stretched before him, alive with colors he had only seen in holographic recordings before. Trees glowed faintly from within, their leaves pulsing with a soft golden light. Pools of water reflected the sky above, showing twin suns that bathed the world in warm, dancing light. Jaren took a cautious step forward. Every sound seemed sharper here. The soft hum of energy fields, the distant calls of strange birds, the rustle of alien leaves in a gentle wind. And then he saw her. Princess Lyra stood at the center of the garden, surrounded by attendants and advisors. Even at a distance, Jaren could see her presence radiating authority. Her robe shimmered with living light, shifting through colors in a pattern he could not name. Her eyes, deep and intelligent, met his, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. He froze. He had expected anger, perhaps scorn, maybe even dismissal. But this was different. Lyra's expression was calm, almost serene, and yet there was an intensity there that pierced through him. It was the look of someone who remembered every detail, every word, every choice that had been made years ago. The look of someone who could hold a grudge for a lifetime, if needed. The attendants whispered among themselves as Jaren approached, bowing slightly as he passed. They spoke a language he had learned only enough to understand courtesy and protocol. He offered a polite nod, but his mind was elsewhere. He had trained for war, but he had not trained for this. This was not a battlefield of starships and plasma weapons. This was a battlefield of hearts and history. The council chamber awaited him. It was a vast room of polished crystal and soft lighting, with chairs shaped like flowing sculptures that seemed to float slightly above the floor. The Xyrian council was already seated, their forms elegant and imposing, with faces as sharp and precise as the towers outside. Jaren's presence was acknowledged with quiet murmurs, but no one stood to greet him. He felt the weight of their judgment even before he had spoken. Lyra was at the center, her posture perfect, her gaze fixed on him. She had not aged in the years he had been away, or perhaps humans simply measured time differently than Xyrans. Either way, she looked just as he remembered, untouchable, brilliant, and terrifying in her composure. "Commander Kale," she said, her voice melodic but firm, carrying across the room without raising. "You have returned." Jaren swallowed, feeling the dryness in his mouth. "I have, Princess," he replied, keeping his voice steady despite the surge of emotions rising within him. "I returned to speak with you, and to complete my mission." Her lips curved into a faint, knowing smile, almost imperceptible. "And yet," she said, "you speak of missions, as if years of absence can be measured in accomplishments alone. Tell me, Jaren Kale, what do you believe has changed since you left this place?" Jaren paused. He had answers prepared for alien generals, for hostile councils, for interstellar negotiators. But not for her. "Much has changed," he said finally. "Humanity has grown, learned, adapted. We have expanded, yes, but we have done so carefully. We have." He trailed off, realizing that words were inadequate. Lyra's gaze softened slightly, though the sharpness in it remained.
"And yet," she said, "you left."
"You abandoned the bonds you swore to uphold. You left me. You left Zarbak Prime. You left your people in confusion." Jaren's chest tightened. He had rehearsed his explanation countless times in the void of space, whispered to himself during long nights aboard his ship. "I left for duty," he said quietly. "I left because humanity needed me elsewhere. I did not abandon with malice, but because I believed it was the only way to ensure survival. I had to choose between personal loyalty and the lives of billions. I chose the latter." The room was silent, save for the soft hum of energy fields embedded in the walls. Jaren could feel the eyes of the council on him, measuring him, judging him, wondering if humans could even comprehend honor in ways the Zirians understood. Lyra nodded slowly, as if considering his words carefully. "Humans are unpredictable," she said. "They think in ways we do not, act in ways we cannot anticipate. That is, their strength." Jaren blinked. The words caught him off guard. Strength? Respect? He had expected anger, but here was acknowledgement. Perhaps it was the first recognition of humanity's unique qualities that he had encountered in years. I hope you understand that I returned because I could not ignore my responsibilities here," he said. "Not just to humanity, but to you, Princess. Not just as a promise made in youth, but as an acknowledgement of what we could accomplish together." Lyra studied him in silence. The light in her robes shifted, reflecting the twin suns outside. And for a moment, she looked almost human, almost vulnerable. But the moment passed. She was still a princess, still the symbol of a powerful civilization, and still someone who could decide the fate of entire star systems with a single word. "Very well," she said at last. "We will discuss the matters at hand. But know this, Commander Kale. Your past decisions, your absence, will be considered alongside your actions today. Do not assume that your heroics alone will sway judgment here." Jaren nodded. "I understand." He followed her through the corridors of the palace, noting the subtle ways the Zirians had adapted to human presence. Holographic displays of galactic charts, simulations of trade routes, and records of interstellar conflicts were projected along the walls. The technology was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, graceful, efficient, and precise. Yet in all its perfection, it lacked the improvisational spark that humans brought to every challenge. That improvisation, that stubborn refusal to follow expectations, had saved countless lives. And yet, standing here, Jaren realized that it might not be enough to simply demonstrate skill. He would need to show humanity's essence, its courage, its creativity, its audacity, if he were to earn respect not just from Lyra, but from the Zirian Council as a whole. As he entered the council chamber, a simulation of the current crisis blinked to life in the center of the room. Alien factions, hostile and growing in strength, threatened not just the Zirian dominion, but human colonies as well. The maps highlighted sectors where rebellion and sabotage had already begun. Humanity's presence in these areas had not gone unnoticed, and the consequences of miscalculation could be catastrophic. Lyra gestured to the simulation. "These are the threats we face," she said. "And yet you return to offer your guidance." "Tell me, Commander, how do you propose to handle them?" Jaren took a deep breath. He did not need to speak of weapon strength, fleet numbers, or technical specifications alone. He needed to speak of human creativity, of thinking outside the rigid patterns that the Zirans relied upon. "We will need to act in ways your council may not expect. he said slowly. We cannot rely on brute force alone. We will use strategy, improvisation, and alliances to turn disadvantage into advantage. And we will do so quickly, before these factions gain the momentum they seek. The council murmured, some voices expressing doubt, others curiosity. Lyra's eyes, however, remained fixed on him. A faint smile appeared at the corner of her lips. Perhaps it was respect. Perhaps it was acknowledgement of what humans could do when underestimated. Jaren felt a flicker of hope. Years of absence, years of guilt, years of personal sacrifice. Perhaps they had not been in vain. Perhaps humanity's unpredictability, its stubborn courage, and its audacity were finally being recognized on a scale larger than any battlefield he had faced. As the meeting continued, Jaren could not help but notice that Lyra's gaze occasionally softened. Not entirely, but enough to hint at understanding. The journey ahead would be difficult. There would be battles, political negotiations, and tests of trust. But for the first time in years, Jaren felt that he had returned not just to face a princess he had left behind, but to prove humanity itself to the galaxy, and he was ready. The council chamber remained tense long after the initial greetings and formalities had ended. Commander Jaren Kale stood in the center, observing the alien leaders with a mixture of caution and confidence. The Zerian council, composed of 7 elders, radiated authority, each one a master of strategy, politics, and diplomacy. Their eyes, sharp as crystalline blades, watched him as if trying to read every thought, every hesitation, and every hidden intention. Princess Lyra sat at the center of the chamber, her posture flawless, her gaze unyielding. She had been silent since the initial exchange, letting Jaren speak, letting him explain humanity's methods, letting him reveal the human way of thinking. Her silence was deliberate. It was a test, and Jaren knew it. The Zerians were skilled in reading body language, in detecting dishonesty and fear, but he had learned long ago how to mask both. What they did not expect was the human ability to improvise, to turn instinct into strategy, to act boldly when logic suggested caution. The human colonies have grown more rapidly than we anticipated, Elder Varric said finally, his voice smooth and deep, resonating like the hum of a massive engine. Your species spreads across star systems, establishing settlements, alliances, and trade networks without the guidance of the Zerian Dominion. You are reckless, Commander Kale, and yet you claim to act with foresight. Explain this contradiction. Jaren's eyes met Varric's. Reckless? He said calmly. Perhaps it seems that way to you. We do not rely solely on rigid structure or tradition. We adapt. We improvise. Where others see risk, we see opportunity. Where others hesitate, we act. That is why we survive. That is why humanity thrives in the galaxy today. A few council members exchanged quiet murmurs, their expressions a mixture of intrigue and disbelief. Lyra's lips curved into the faintest smile. She had said humans were unpredictable, and here was proof. Their style of thinking, their approach to challenges was entirely different from the precise methodical patterns the Zerians had mastered over centuries. Elder Kelia leaned forward. Adaptation is one thing, Commander Kell. Survival is another. You speak of improvisation, yet you cannot account for the chaos your colonies may create. Do you understand the potential for conflict when humans act unpredictably within Zerian-controlled regions? Jaren nodded. I understand the risk. And yes, unpredictability can create chaos, but it also creates solutions that no one else can see. Humans are not limited to what is expected. We find ways to win even when circumstances seem impossible. Lyra's gaze softened, though only slightly. Humans are bold, she said quietly. They act without fear of consequence. They see the galaxy as something to be shaped, not merely observed. Exactly, Jaren replied.
And that is what I propose now. We face factions that threaten both your dominion and human colonies.
These groups are organized, ruthless, and intent on destruction. We cannot defeat them through numbers alone. We need strategy, speed, and ingenuity. And that is what humanity can offer.
Elder Varric raised an eyebrow. And what of loyalty, Commander?
Will your species follow instructions, or will human pride cause insubordination in critical moments? Jaren smiled faintly. Humans follow leadership that earns respect, not authority that demands obedience. If the mission is clear and the stakes are understood, we act decisively and without hesitation. That is our loyalty. The council fell silent, and for a moment the chamber seemed to hold its breath. Lyra's expression remained unreadable, yet her eyes sparkled with interest. She had spent centuries observing humans from a distance, thinking she understood them, judging them by their impulsive nature. Now she was beginning to see a different picture. Humans were clever, determined, and unafraid to challenge norms. They could be a threat, certainly, but they could also be allies, unlike any the Zyrians had ever known. Very well, Lyra said finally. Commander Kale, you will be given command of a joint operation. Human and Zyrian forces will work together to suppress the rebellion in the outer sectors. But understand this. Failure is not an option. These factions are stronger than you realize. They are coordinated, and they have resources we have yet to fully understand. Jaren nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle onto his shoulders. He had faced overwhelming odds before, but this was different. The enemy was not a single fleet or a hostile world. It was a network of factions, each with its own goals, each capable of striking unpredictably. Success required more than bravery. It required human ingenuity at its finest. The first reports came as soon as he left the council chamber. Sensors picked up small fleet movements near the border of the Hadrian cluster, a sector where human colonies and Zyrian trade routes overlapped. These ships were lightly armed but moved with precision, avoiding patrols and striking quickly at supply stations. Jaren studied the holographic map projected in the operations room. They are testing our response, he said. Small attacks, probing defenses, looking for weaknesses. Classic behavior when factions want to gauge strength before committing to a full assault. Lyra appeared beside him, silent, her eyes fixed on the map. "And what is your plan, Commander?" she asked. "We divide our forces," he explained. "Human ships will take rapid response positions, striking where the enemy is weakest. Zyrian ships will hold the line, using superior firepower and shields to protect key points. We force them to react, create openings, and then exploit those openings. It will be risky, but the alternative is waiting for them to gain momentum." Lyra nodded. Bold. Humans are indeed unpredictable. The first engagement came at dawn, under the light of twin suns. Jaren's fleet moved silently through the void, sensors scanning for enemy movement. The rebel faction appeared near the Hadrian cluster, a dozen ships striking at a supply hub. The Zyrian commanders expected a frontal attack, but Jaren's humans executed a maneuver no one anticipated. Using small, agile vessels, they created decoys to draw the enemy fleet into a narrow corridor between two asteroid fields. The rebels pursued, confident in their numbers, unaware that humans had prepared an ambush. As they entered the corridor, hidden drones and human warships struck from both sides, disabling engines and disabling key weapons. The rebels were forced to retreat, humiliated and surprised. Back in the operations room, the council observed in stunned silence. Elder Varric leaned toward Kellia. "These humans, they think differently. They do not follow expected patterns. They use creativity as a weapon." Lyra's expression reflected satisfaction mixed with curiosity. "And yet," she said quietly, "this is only the beginning. If the factions adapt as we expect, the real test of humanity's ingenuity will come soon." Jaren felt a surge of pride, not for himself, but for his people. Humanity had survived countless challenges, often underestimated and dismissed by other species. Here among the Xerians, they were finally proving their value, showing that unpredictability and courage were just as powerful as technology or tradition. But the celebration was brief. Intelligence reports indicated that the rebel factions had more allies than expected. They had established supply lines through unmonitored sectors, hidden fleets in asteroid fields, and spies within both human and Xerian colonies. The war was far from over, and Jaren realized that the upcoming battles would test not just skill but trust, collaboration, and endurance. Lyra approached him once more as they reviewed the new data. "You have shown promise, Commander Kale," she said. "But promise alone does not win wars. You must anticipate adaptation. The factions will learn from every move." "Can humans keep pace?" Jaren met her gaze unflinching. "We will. Humans adapt, we improvise, and we never give up. The galaxy has underestimated us for too long."
Now they will see what we can do.
Her faint smile returned. "Indeed. And perhaps," she said softly, "some humans can also teach Xarians lessons about courage, resilience, and ingenuity. You may not have realized it when you left, but the past and the present are converging here, Commander. How you handle this will define the future, not just for humans, but for all who live in this galaxy." The warning was clear. Humanity's audacity and adaptability would be tested like never before. Jaren understood that this mission was about more than just tactics or military strategy. It was about proving the value of human ingenuity in a universe that had long doubted it. Every choice, every decision, every improvisation could change the outcome of the war. The first shock waves of battle had shown the Xyrians what humans were capable of, but the larger storm was only beginning. Jaren's heart raced with anticipation and determination. The galaxy had doubted humanity's worth, their courage, and their ability to survive. Now they would learn that humans did not follow rules. They made them. They did not yield. They adapted. They did not surrender. They conquered the impossible. And in the shadows of the council chamber, Princess Lyra watched him, studying his every move, weighing every word. Her own role in this conflict was not yet revealed. She could command her people, influence strategy, and wield the full weight of the Xerian dominion, but she had a growing sense that humans, with all their flaws and brilliance, were forces even she had underestimated. The tension between two worlds, human and Xerian, was only beginning to show its cracks. Alliances would be tested. Rebellions would strike with fury. And through it all, Jaren Kale would lead humanity with the ingenuity, courage, and audacity that had brought them this far. The galaxy had yet to see the full force of human unpredictability. And when it did, it would remember forever that humans could not be controlled, underestimated, or ignored. Jaren leaned back, letting the data and battle reports wash over him. Every challenge ahead was daunting, every enemy cunning, but the human spirit thrived on challenge. And as he looked at Princess Lyra standing among her people, he understood that proving humanity's worth was no longer just a mission. It was a declaration. The humans were here, and they would not be dismissed again. The first battle had been won, but the war was only beginning. And Jaren Kale, the man who had left a princess behind for duty, was now returning not just to face her, but to show the galaxy that humanity had arrived, and they were unstoppable when underestimated. The morning sun of Zarvok Prime shone through the palace's towering windows, scattering light across the operations room. Commander Jaren Kale sat at the central table, reviewing new intelligence reports from the outer sectors. Every report told the same story. The rebel factions were growing bolder, striking deeper into both human and Xerian territory, and doing so with an organization that was frightening in its efficiency. But Jaren did not see panic. He saw opportunity. Across the room, Princess Lyra observed quietly, standing near a holographic projection of the galaxy. Her eyes traced the movement of fleets, noting supply lines and ambush points. She had been present in the first engagements, studying humans in action, and what she had seen surprised her. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but more than that, they were clever. Where Xerians relied on perfect calculations and precise formations, humans improvised, adapted, and turned disadvantages into advantages. The first human squadron had struck the rebels with bold maneuvers no one expected. Tiny ships had darted in and out of asteroid fields, luring enemy fighters into traps, disabling engines and weapons before the rebels could react. It had been daring, risky, and entirely human. Lyra could not deny that it had worked brilliantly. Jaren stood and turned to face her. "The rebels are learning," he said calmly. "They saw our first moves, and they are adjusting. That means we need to think faster, act smarter, and use their assumptions against them." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "You speak as though improvisation is a strategy, Commander Kale. You rely on instinct more than protocol." "Instinct is backed by preparation," he replied. "Humans study patterns, anticipate responses, and then break them. We do what others cannot, because we are willing to risk failure where others fear it." Her gaze softened slightly, not in warmth, but in acknowledgement. "Perhaps you are right. Humans may have the potential to teach even the Xerians something we thought we knew." Before Jaren could respond, the comm panel buzzed. A report from the Hadrian cluster flashed across the screen. A rebel fleet had moved toward a heavily populated human colony, intending to strike before reinforcements could arrive. Sensors indicated 12 warships, heavily armed, and several smaller support vessels carrying explosives and sabotage units. Jaren leaned forward, scanning the map. "We cannot let them hit the colony," he said. "If they succeed, the damage will be catastrophic, and morale will collapse. We have to intercept, but we cannot fight them head-on. There are too many." Lyra stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "Then how do you propose to stop them without risking the entire fleet?" Jaren smiled faintly. "By using what the rebels do not expect. They think in patterns, in straight lines. They rely on numbers. We will use their confidence against them. Small, fast teams will strike first, draw attention. Then larger forces will ambush them at choke points we have prepared."
"Their predictability is their weakness."
The princess studied him for a long moment. "Bold," she said quietly. "Humans are indeed daring, but risk is a dangerous companion. And yet it is necessary," Jaren replied. "Risk and reward go hand in hand. Humans survive by taking the right risks at the right time." The fleet deployed into space, stretching across light years, moving with precision yet fluidity. Human pilots followed Jaren's orders with confidence, maneuvering smaller ships into positions the rebels had not anticipated. Xyrian warships held the line, their shields strong and weapons ready. But it was the humans who drew the enemy in. The first engagement was chaotic, yet controlled. Rebel scouts were destroyed before they could relay information. When the main fleet entered the asteroid field, human drones activated from hidden positions, disabling engines and cutting off communication channels. Rebel captains shouted orders, frustrated by interference they could not anticipate. From the command bridge, Jaren watched as humans executed maneuvers no Xyrian could have predicted. Ships would dart forward, launch a strike, then disappear into asteroid cover before enemy weapons could target them. It was daring. Frustratingly so to the rebels, and utterly effective. Lyra observed silently, impressed despite herself. She had studied humanity, thought she understood it, yet seeing it in action changed her perspective. Humans were not just impulsive or reckless. They were adaptable, intelligent, and unafraid to take chances that others would consider suicidal. The courage she had dismissed in her youth now carried the weight of strategy and execution. The rebels, frustrated and disorganized, attempted to retreat, but Jaren's plan was already in motion. Hidden human squadrons blocked escape routes, forcing the enemy fleet into narrow passages between asteroid clusters. Xerian ships struck from the flanks, delivering precise damage while human fighters executed rapid boarding operations. By the end of the engagement, the rebel fleet was shattered, its leaders captured or forced into retreat. Back in the operations room, the council members murmured in disbelief. Elder Varric, who had been skeptical from the start, leaned forward. "These humans, they do not follow the logic we know. They act unpredictably, and yet their results are undeniable." Lyra nodded slowly. "And this is only one engagement. If they can think like this consistently, humanity may be a force unlike any other in the galaxy." Jaren did not wait for praise. He had already turned to the next report. Multiple rebel groups were coordinating strikes across other sectors, hoping to divide attention and exploit weaknesses. It was a larger test now, and he would need every ounce of human ingenuity to counter it. He called for a strategy meeting, inviting both human and Xerian commanders. "We cannot respond the same way to every attack," he explained. "The rebels are trying to predict us. We must remain unpredictable, move quickly, and use misdirection. Where they see one threat, we create 3. Where they expect hesitation, we act boldly. That is the human advantage." The commanders exchanged nervous glances. Some questioned the logic of improvisation at such a scale. Others saw the results of previous engagements and realized that Jaren's methods worked. Humans operated differently, yes, but their way of thinking had yielded results that rigid Xyrian strategy could not. Lyra listened carefully, noting the confidence in Jaren's voice. She had seen the results firsthand and could not deny the truth. Humans were a force to be reckoned with, and Jaren Kale, the man she once thought impulsive, was leading them with intelligence, foresight, and daring. The next mission brought them to the outer sector of the Aurelia Expanse, where rebel factions had fortified positions on moons and asteroid bases. Conventional attacks would have taken months, if not longer, to secure these strongholds. Jaren, however, had a different approach. He proposed simultaneous strikes using small human teams to disable power cores, sabotage communications, and create controlled chaos, while Xyrian forces provided support and containment. The operation began at dawn. Human squads infiltrated asteroid bases with stealth ships that moved faster and quieter than anything the Xerians possessed. They deployed drones that could cut power, hack security systems, and confuse enemy sensors. Explosions were precise and minimal, disabling infrastructure without unnecessary destruction. Rebel forces, expecting a conventional frontal assault, were caught off guard. Jaren coordinated the attack from his command ship, issuing orders in real time as human ingenuity combined with Xerian firepower. When a rebel squad attempted to counterattack, human pilots executed daring flanking maneuvers, striking where the enemy did not anticipate. Entire bases fell within hours, their forces captured or scattered, and the human and Xyrian fleets remained largely unscathed. Princess Lyra observed the operation with awe. She had witnessed wars, rebellions, and sieges across the galaxy, but the combination of human creativity and determination was unlike anything she had seen. Humans did not fight with brute force alone. They fought with intelligence, flexibility, and unyielding courage. They turned disadvantage into advantage, risk into strategy, and unpredictability into victory. After the mission, Jaren debriefed the commanders. "These engagements show what humans can do," he said. "We survive because we think differently, because we act where others hesitate, because we refuse to be predictable. The galaxy has underestimated humanity for too long. It is time they recognize our value, not just as warriors, but as strategists, innovators, and leaders." Lyra approached him once more, her expression unreadable but thoughtful. "You have proven yourself, Commander Kale. And yet," she said, "proving a point is different from winning hearts and minds. Do you think humanity can maintain this level of ingenuity under sustained pressure? Can you show the same adaptability when the stakes are even higher?" Jaren smiled faintly. "We will not only maintain it," he replied. "We will surpass it. Humans rise to challenges. We do not falter when the odds are against us. We learn, adapt, and grow stronger. This is who we are." Lyra's eyes lingered on him. She had once believed that humans were impulsive, reckless, and unworthy of trust. Now, she saw the truth. Humans were resilient, clever, and bold in ways the galaxy had not anticipated. And Jaren Kale embodied those traits. He had left her years ago, but he had returned not just as a hero, but as a living example of humanity's potential. The day ended with victory reports flooding the operations room. Rebel factions had suffered significant losses, their momentum disrupted. Human ingenuity had turned what could have been a devastating series of attacks into a display of strategy, courage, and adaptability. And throughout it all, Lyra watched, taking note of every tactic, every decision, and every human instinct that had turned the tide. The galaxy had underestimated humans, but not for long. Jaren Kale had shown what it meant to combine courage with intelligence, improvisation with strategy, and audacity with skill. Humanity was no longer a distant threat to be dismissed. It was a force rising, capable of shaping the fate of stars, and earning respect even from civilizations that had long looked down on them. As Jaren reviewed the reports one last time before resting, he felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. The battles had been won, but the war was far from over. Rebel factions remained, alliances were fragile, and the galaxy itself was watching. But he knew one thing for certain. Humans would continue to rise, and they would do so with the audacity, ingenuity, and courage that had brought them this far. Princess Lyra, standing silently by the command console, understood this too. She had witnessed the heart of humanity, and she could not ignore it. They were more than survivors. They were pioneers, strategists, and warriors who refused to be underestimated. And in Jaren Kale, she had seen the embodiment of everything human: old, clever, unyielding, and unstoppable. The battle for the galaxy was only beginning, and humanity had already shown its hand. Unpredictable, daring, and brilliant, they were ready to meet whatever challenge came next. And as Jaren Kale looked toward the stars, he knew that this was only the beginning of a story that would reshape the galaxy and prove, beyond doubt, that humans were a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy seemed calm for a brief moment. A fragile pause before the storm. Commander Jaren Kale stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Resolute, observing the stars. The victories of the past weeks had been hard won, but they had revealed a truth that resonated through every corner of the galaxy. Humans were not to be underestimated. Yet Jaren knew the war was far from over. Rebel factions were regrouping, coordinating more effectively than before. Reports showed fleets converging near the outer rim of the Zarvok system. Supplies were being stockpiled, bases reinforced, and mercenaries hired from distant sectors. The rebels had learned from their defeats. They would not repeat the same mistakes. Lyra approached silently, her presence commanding yet graceful. She had accompanied Jaren on several missions now, witnessing human ingenuity in action. Where she had once doubted, she now watched with a mixture of admiration and calculation. "Commander," she said quietly, "the rebels are preparing something larger. They have combined forces from 3 sectors. Their fleets are greater than we anticipated, and their strategy is evolving." Jaren studied the reports. "They are trying to overwhelm us," he said. "Oh, they want a decisive victory to crush human colonies and destabilize your dominion at the same time. But they do not understand human adaptability."
They cannot predict how we will respond.
Lyra's eyes lingered on him. "And yet, there is risk. Even humans have limits." "Limits exist only when you assume predictability," Jaren replied. "We will meet their challenge, not with numbers alone, but with strategy, improvisation, and courage. That is our advantage." The plan was audacious. Rebel fleets were converging on Zarvok Prime itself, aiming to strike at the heart of the Dominion and human presence in a single, coordinated assault. A frontal attack would be suicide. Instead, Jaren proposed a multi-layered defense: small, fast, human squads to harass and confuse the enemy. Xerian capital ships to protect critical points, and coordinated counterattacks from hidden positions throughout the outer system. Every maneuver relied on timing, communication, and trust between species who had only recently learned to work together. Preparations began immediately. Human pilots tested new formations, improvising patterns that Xerians had never seen before. Drones and autonomous systems were deployed, capable of altering course, reassigning targets, and disrupting enemy sensors. Supply lines were rerouted, reinforcements positioned strategically, and escape corridors planned, not for retreat, but for tactical advantage. When the first rebel fleets arrived, the engagement began with controlled chaos. Rebel scouts entered the system, expecting to gather information unchallenged. Instead, human interceptors struck immediately, darting through asteroid fields and striking with precision. Drones disabled communication relays, leaving the enemy blind and confused. Xerian capital ships followed, unleashing volleys of plasma fire, but it was the humans who dictated the pace. They moved unpredictably, striking where the rebels thought the system was safe, retreating before retaliation could hit. Every ambush, every counterattack, revealed the brilliance of human adaptability. Lyra watched from the observation deck, her usual calm replaced by a growing respect. She had seen countless battles in her lifetime, led fleets into war, and commanded armies that spanned star systems. Yet she had never encountered a species that combined courage, creativity, and audacity in a way that was both deliberate and instinctive. Humans did not just fight, they transformed the battlefield itself. Hours passed, the battle escalating into a full-scale confrontation. Rebel fleets pressed harder, learning from the humans' patterns, attempting to predict maneuvers. Yet Jaren had anticipated this. He rotated forces, introduced new variables, and forced the enemy into traps that capitalized on their expectations. Where they assumed stability, humans created chaos. Where they expected caution, humans acted boldly. Rebel commanders shouted orders across broken communication channels, frustrated by unexpected losses and the unpredictable nature of human strategy. Ships that should have survived were disabled, supply lines severed, and critical reinforcements trapped in asteroid corridors controlled by humans. By the time the rebels realized the depth of the human strategy, it was too late. Their fleet was fractured, their plans undone, and their morale collapsing. Amid the chaos, Jaren coordinated his forces with calm precision. Human ingenuity shone brightest, not in brute force, but in improvisation. Drones capable of rapid repair kept ships operational. Small fighter squadrons executed flanking maneuvers that drew attention and resources, leaving larger threats vulnerable. Rebels found themselves caught in multiple directions simultaneously, unable to predict which human squadron would strike next. The turning point came when a rebel dreadnought attempted to break through a critical choke point. Human pilots anticipated the move, luring the ship into an ambush where Xerian capital ships awaited. The dreadnought, powerful and heavily armed, was disabled before it could reach its target. The remaining rebel ships retreated, harried by relentless human attacks, their cohesion broken. After the engagement, Jaren and Lyra convened with the Xerian Council. Reports indicated that the rebel factions were scattered, their supply lines compromised, and their morale shattered. The outer sectors were temporarily secure, but the war had revealed a deeper truth. Humans were more than allies. They were a force that could redefine the balance of power in the galaxy. Elder Varric spoke first. "Commander Kale, your humans have performed beyond expectation. They do not fight as others do. Their unpredictability, their audacity. It is remarkable." Lyra's gaze met Jaren's. "Indeed, but they are still untested, under sustained pressure. Will this brilliance hold when faced with challenges that cannot be anticipated?" Jaren nodded. "We will not just hold. We will continue to adapt, innovate, and overcome. Humans survive not by avoiding risk, but by embracing it strategically. That is the core of who we are." The council fell silent, considering his words. Lyra's expression reflected a rare moment of reflection. She had spent centuries observing humans, believing she understood them, yet seeing them in action had shifted her perspective. They were more than survivors. They were innovators, leaders, and warriors capable of extraordinary feats. Later, Jaren moved to the observation deck, looking out at the stars. He thought of the rebels' attempts to strike fear into humanity, to destabilize colonies, and to challenge the Zyrian dominion. All had failed. Humanity had not only survived, they had turned the enemy's strength into their own advantage. The galaxy had underestimated them for too long. Lyra joined him, standing silently beside the commander. "You have changed the outcome of this war, Jaren," she said quietly. "And yet this is only one battle. There will be more." "The galaxy will continue to test humanity." Jaren's eyes did not leave the stars. "Then let them test us. Humans do not yield. We learn, adapt, and overcome. And when others doubt us, that is when we shine brightest." Her gaze softened slightly, her respect for him and his people evident. "I once believed humans were impulsive, reckless, and unpredictable in ways that were dangerous. Now I see that unpredictability is your strength. Your courage and ingenuity are unmatched, and I am beginning to understand the weight of your potential." Jaren allowed himself a brief smile. Years ago, he had left this world believing duty required him to abandon personal bonds. He had returned to face not just a princess, but a galaxy that doubted humanity. Through courage, strategy, and ingenuity, he had proven that humans could stand alongside the most advanced civilizations and command respect. The galaxy had seen their audacity. They had witnessed human creativity under fire. They had underestimated humans at their own peril, and as Jaren stood beside Lyra, he understood that this was only the beginning. The human forces were no longer simply survivors. They were innovators, warriors, and leaders who could change the course of entire star systems. Their ingenuity was a weapon as powerful as any fleet, and their courage inspired those who fought alongside them. Lyra looked at Jaren and spoke softly, almost as if to herself. "Humans are more than I ever imagined. And this man, he embodies everything they are capable of." Jaren nodded, turning his gaze back to the stars. The outer sectors were quiet for now, but he knew the rebels would regroup. New threats would arise. Challenges would test the limits of human endurance, strategy, and creativity. But he was ready. Humanity was ready. And when the galaxy tested them again, humans would respond. Not with fear, hesitation, or predictability, but with ingenuity, audacity, and courage that would redefine what it meant to be a force in the stars. The war was far from over. Fleets would clash, alliances would be tested, and the future of countless systems hung in the balance. But humanity had already proven something vital, that even when underestimated, they could turn every challenge into an opportunity, every risk into a victory, and every doubt into a lesson. Jaren Kale had returned to face the princess he once abandoned, but he had also returned to show the galaxy the heart of humanity. And the galaxy would never forget. The outer sectors were calm for the moment, but the universe held countless surprises. Yet humans thrived on the unpredictable. They adapted, they overcame, and they shone brightest when others thought them weak. And as Jaren Kale looked out at the endless stars, he knew that humanity was ready for whatever came next. They were unstoppable, unyielding, and brilliant in ways the galaxy had only just begun to comprehend. The battles ahead would be fierce, but the human spirit was fiercer, and when the next challenge came, the galaxy would see the full measure of what it meant to underestimate a species that refused to be dismissed. The twin suns of Zarvok Prime hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the palace gardens. Commander Jaren Kale stood on the observation deck of the Resolute, gazing out at the approaching enemy fleets. Reports had confirmed that rebel factions had consolidated once more, forming their largest armada yet. This time, They aimed not only to challenge humanity's colonies, but to strike directly at the heart of the Xerian dominion. Beside him, Princess Lyra remained silent, her eyes focused on the stars. She had witnessed human ingenuity in countless battles, yet even she could not predict the audacity that Jaren would display in the coming hours. The calm before the storm was deceptive. Every move the rebels made had been calculated, but humans thrived where calculation failed. "This is it," Jaren said quietly, his voice steady. "If we fail, the outer sectors fall. But if we succeed, humanity will not just survive, it will change the way the galaxy sees us." Lyra turned to him.
"And you believe this plan will succeed?"
Jaren's gaze did not waver.
"Not just believe."
"I know it will. Humans survive by doing what others cannot, by taking risks no one else will. The galaxy will see that today."
The fleet mobilized.
Human ships started forward, smaller and faster than anything the rebels had anticipated. Xyrian warships followed, holding defensive positions to protect vital points. But it was the humans who drove the offensive. Jaren's strategy relied on precision, improvisation, and audacity. Every ship, every squadron, every pilot understood their role, yet they had the freedom to adapt on the fly. As the first rebel ships entered Zarvok's space, they found themselves confronted by chaos. Human interceptors moved unpredictably, striking at weak points, retreating before retaliation could hit. Drones deployed automatically, disrupting sensors and disabling weapons. Rebel commanders shouted orders across damaged communication channels, frustrated by the inability to predict human tactics. Lyra watched silently, but her mind raced. Every engagement, every maneuver, revealed the core of humanity's strength: courage, adaptability, and ingenuity combined in ways that no other species could match. Even the Xerian commanders, long accustomed to thinking in rigid patterns, struggled to comprehend the brilliance of human strategy. The battle escalated. Rebel dreadnoughts fired volleys that would have obliterated human ships under conventional circumstances. But the humans were not conventional. They moved in and out of asteroid fields, using debris as cover, striking unexpectedly and exploiting the enemy's assumptions. At one critical moment, a massive rebel cruiser attempted to break through the human lines and strike the palace directly. Jaren acted instantly, coordinating a daring flanking maneuver. Small human squadrons lured the cruiser into a trap between two Xerian capital ships. Drones attached to the cruiser's hull, sabotaging engines and weapon systems. The cruiser was disabled before it could reach its target, its crew captured, and its plans ruined. The rebels panicked. Their fleet, once confident and coordinated, was now fractured and vulnerable. Jaren anticipated this, splitting his forces to press the advantage. Human pilots executed simultaneous strikes on multiple fronts, striking fear and confusion into the enemy. Rebel ships collided, ran aground on asteroids, and were destroyed or forced to retreat. Amid the chaos, Lyra observed Jaren closely. He was calm, composed, and focused, directing human and Xerian forces with precision and authority. She had underestimated him before, doubted the effectiveness of human strategy, and questioned their ability to stand against overwhelming odds. Now, she saw the truth. Humans were a force to be reckoned with, capable of not only surviving but dominating through ingenuity and courage. Hours passed, the battle reaching a climax. The rebel armada was on the verge of collapse. Their morale shattered, their coordination destroyed. Jaren's forces held the advantage, controlling the flow of battle and exploiting every weakness. Human ingenuity, combined with Xyrian strength, had turned what could have been disaster into triumph. Finally, the last of the rebel ships attempted a desperate retreat. Jaren ordered a pursuit, but he allowed some to escape. He understood the value of sending a message. Humanity would not seek unnecessary destruction, but it would not be defeated. Survival and ingenuity were the hallmarks of his people, and today they had proven both. The operations room erupted in quiet celebration. Reports confirmed the victory. Rebel fleets were shattered, supply lines destroyed, and key leaders captured or scattered. The outer sectors were secure, for now, and the galaxy had witnessed the power of human creativity and courage. Lyra stepped forward, her expression thoughtful. She approached Jaren, her presence commanding, yet reflective. "You have done more than I imagined, Commander Kale," she said. "Humans have proven their worth not just in survival, but in leadership, strategy, and courage. The galaxy will not forget this day." Jaren nodded. "It was not just me. It was every human pilot, every engineer, every soldier who trusted in our abilities. We survived because we adapted, because we refused to be predictable, and because we refused to give up." Lyra studied him, the faintest smile appearing on her lips. "You left me years ago, believing duty required sacrifice, and now you have returned not just to face the consequences, but to show the galaxy what humans are capable of. You have exceeded every expectation." Jaren's gaze softened. "I returned to face you, yes, but also to show that humanity cannot be dismissed. We are more than survival. We are ingenuity, courage, and determination. And today, the galaxy has seen it." The princess nodded, a rare acknowledgement of respect. She extended her hand, not as royalty to a subject, but as an ally, recognizing an equal. "Humans have arrived, Commander Kale, and they will not be ignored again." Jaren took her hand, feeling the weight of both history and triumph. Years of absence, guilt, and uncertainty were washed away in this moment of recognition. Humanity had not just survived, they had reshaped the galaxy's perception of them, and Jaren Kale had led the way. The aftermath of the battle was swift. Rebel factions scattered, unable to regroup effectively. Human colonies received much-needed reinforcements and supplies. Zyrian leaders, once skeptical of humans, began to see them as indispensable allies, capable of unmatched creativity and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Lyra and Jaren walked through the palace gardens later that evening. The twin suns had set, leaving the sky ablaze with the light of distant stars. "You have changed everything," Lyra said softly. "Not just for humans, but for the entire Dominion. Your people are no longer seen as naive or reckless. They are recognized as a force capable of shaping the galaxy." Jaren smiled, feeling a sense of quiet pride. "Humans survive because we do not conform to expectation. We take risks, adapt, and act boldly. That is what makes us strong. That is what makes us human." Lyra nodded, her gaze distant as she considered the future. "And now, we must build on this. Trust, alliances, and respect have been earned today, but the galaxy will continue to test you. Do you think humanity is ready for what comes next?" Jaren's eyes sparkled with determination. "We will be ready. Humans rise to challenges, no matter how great. We will face the next threat and the one after that, with courage, ingenuity, and strength. The galaxy has learned a lesson today. Do not underestimate humanity." The princess's smile grew, genuine and warm, a rare glimpse of emotion from the royal figure who had once been abandoned at the altar. "Then, perhaps," she said quietly, "there is more to your people than I ever imagined. And perhaps there is more to you than I knew." Jaren felt the weight of the past lift. Years of absence, choices made in the name of duty, and the uncertainty of what had been left behind were all eclipsed by the present moment. He had returned to face a princess, to prove humanity's worth, and to show that courage and ingenuity could overcome even the most daunting challenges. The galaxy had seen humanity at its best. Humans had fought with intelligence, creativity, and daring, overcoming odds that no one else could have survived. Rebel fleets had been defeated, alliances strengthened, and the perception of an entire species reshaped. Lyra and Jaren stood together, looking out at the stars. The battle was over, but the war for recognition, trust, and respect continued. Humanity had taken its place in the galaxy, not as a minor player to be dismissed, but as a force capable of shaping the future. And in that moment, Commander Jaren Kale understood something profound. He had not only returned to face a princess he had left behind, but he had returned to show the galaxy the true measure of humanity. They were courageous, clever, and unstoppable. They would not be underestimated again. The twin suns set completely, leaving the sky dark but alive with the light of countless stars. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never forget it. The wars ahead would be long and difficult, but humans thrived on challenges. They adapted, they learned, they overcame. And when the next threat came, they would meet it with ingenuity, courage, and the unyielding spirit that had brought them this far. Commander Jaren Kale had faced the past, confronted the present, and secured a future for humanity among the stars. Princess Lyra, who had once doubted, now recognized their potential. Together, human and Zirian, they had changed the course of history. And as the stars stretched endlessly before them, one truth shone brighter than any fleet or weapon. Humanity was here to stay. They were brilliant, daring, and unstoppable, and the galaxy had no choice but to recognize it.